evening for a variety of reasons. Of course, some of which is that I started actually coming to my post-secondary education here at UFV. Back when it was UCFV, this exact building is kind of where I started my post-secondary education in my early 20s as a young mom. And so one of the things that I'm going to do tonight is share a bit of my story. I'm going to honor kind of the vulnerability and the expectation that many people have about the stories when we talk about young people transitioning out of care, by telling you a little bit about my transition story and inviting others to think about how transitions kind of move through their lives and how that experience, the universal experience of transitioning, actually can tell us a lot about how we can extend care and support as a community to young people as they also transition to adulthood. I see tons of what I assume are CYC students in the house. Can I get a like, how many folks? Nice. And if I'm not mistaken, it's actually second or third year CYC students who put this on. Fourth year, I see like, actually we're fourth year students, so thank you for that. I do have to say that I have a penchant for, I have extra love for CYC because in my view, they've got CYC has a long practice and history of activism in their work, and I think that that's something that has been lost through a lot of, for a variety of reasons, it's been a lost practice, and I'm really excited to see that these are the conversations that you're hosting and supporting, and you'll be out kind of doing that amazing practice in the world, so thanks for that. So, a bit of my story. My story kind of really started when I was about 14 and a half, and I had green hair and a ton of piercings and was a bit of a punk. And by being a punk, it also meant that I was really interested in spaces where young people were welcomed. And I was really lucky in small town BC, a little place called 100 Mile House. This new little coffee shop opened, and they actually welcomed young people into that space. And it was so cool. Like, I can't even begin to explain. Like in 100 Mile House, first of all, it was the only place that you could go into that was non-smoking, way before non-smoking laws. They had brown paper on the, like news scrap paper on the tables and crayons and markers. And anyone who was in there was allowed to just like write on the tables and draw. It was a really unique space. And so I went there and they had the first cappuccino machine. It's the first time I had a mocha and an espresso and a latte, and I'm addicted. But what I enjoyed was that it seemed like there was something possible that I had never experienced. And so I went back to this restaurant daily for several weeks, and I kept saying, I really think you should hire me. I'd really like to work here. This place is really cool, and I'm cool, and so can you just hire me? And they kept saying, no, we're a small family-run organization. And at the end of it all, I persisted enough that they were like, yeah, okay, fine, we'll hire you. And then the owners, John and Eva, actually became like second parents to me. So, I mean, I think one of the key parts of that part of my transition story is I was surrounded by adults who were willing to take a healthy risk on a young person who showed up at their doorstep at a really inopportune time, not knowing and or expecting what kind of a relationship was gonna kind of pop up and stick with them. It's been 17 years since I've first met them, and they're still a big part of my life. So I think I just want to highlight that adults willing to take healthy risks are a real necessary component of communities that demonstrate support for young people in a transition to adulthood. I think one of the things that was also really cool is these were two really offbeat people who had done all kinds of strange things in life, but things maybe looking back aren't actually that strange. They went to university, they traveled the world, they had a variety of career experiences in different sectors. And so what they showed me was that actually that's a very normative kind of experience in life, that you don't necessarily go to school and know exactly what you want to be and then you go out in the world and you be that for the rest of your life. They really highlighted that opportunities come in all shapes and sizes, and that it was important to dream a lot bigger than I could have ever imagined. And so I think that's an additional thing. As a community, thinking about how to support young people transitioning to adulthood like we would for our own kids, we really need to think beyond the scope of what we think is possible for these delicate, traumatized, troubled kids. We actually need to create the kind of space the kind of conversation and the communities that really embraces the young people that live in that community, that really sees the value and the potential that young people from all walks of life bring to the community and how that can enrich their lives. So really ensuring that young people have access to adults and people of all ages and cultures and lived experience to learn from and to see what else is possible. I think that's really key. Not that long ago, I got married, which was a total shock to many of the people who know me, including myself for quite a while, that I was in this like crazy world where marriage was something I would consider. But one of the cool things about getting married after being with my partner for many, many years is that we invited a ton of people from all different places in our lives to get together. And I have this one picture from my wedding, and I call it Kids in the Hall, and it's framed and it's in my house, and I'm looking at it here. And it's myself, my son, who is now going to be 14 soon, who is, he was here. He was in my belly when I was finishing my grade 12 year of high school. So I count him as part of my high school experience. Next to us is my the youth care worker for the local alternate school, one of my alternate school teachers, and 2 or 3 of my other friends who were in school during that time. And I think that why I really love this picture is that it highlights the importance of education, and not just regular kinds of education, but the people who are surrounding me in that picture recognize that education wasn't just formal education, wasn't just getting a diploma. I think that that's a really important thing, but it was also about being surrounded by people who were willing to help me identify different kinds of learning opportunities, and that created the space for me to understand what being a learner was. Not just how to memorize things and how to write essays the right way and do good on my tests, but actually how to cultivate a passion for learning and reflection and for being engaged and taking responsibility for my own learning in life. And that happened because I was surrounded in my educational and in my community experiences with people who had a love for life and a love for learning. It was really, really key. So another thing about my transition in life is, I've mentioned, I have a son who is going to be 15 soon. And so as a student of CYC, as a person who did a lot of work educating both social workers, practitioners, police officers, and young people about child rights, I'm a huge advocate for ensuring that young people understand what their rights are, but also that as adults we have a responsibility to help actualize those rights. And for any of you who have a teenager in your home, you realize probably where this is going, right? That supporting young people to actualize their rights and just telling them about them are 2 very different things. Which means that there's lots of conversation in our home about rights, about responsibility, about privilege, about where those things are connected and where we need to kind of pull them apart and make sure that they're actually not connected, that rights are separate than responsibilities in certain cases, and it's important to recognize that. But also that in order for young people to actualize their rights, knowing what they are and knowing that first of all they have a right to be involved in decisions that affect them, is kind of like the key to unlock the door to actualizing the rest of their rights. What's interesting though is for many adults who work in the field or work in the sector who know about child rights, it's often that's the key that they're most scared to give up. They're like, oh, if we make space for young people to be involved in decision making, it's so much work. And it takes too much time and we don't have the resources, and I have these reports to write and I have other things to do. But I just want to highlight the importance of doing that work. That actually, the more we can support young people's voices to be heard, the more we create the space for them to actualize their own rights, actually the easier our work becomes. The more we are freed up to be in relationship with young people, the more we are able to feel excited and engaged in our work and being able to see change. And I think that that's one of the big things about my transition to adulthood, and one that I see in my own son in his transition to adulthood, is that conversations about rights and about ensuring that he has the space to actualize them is tricky, but also it needs to be developmentally appropriate. So one of the things that has been a rub for me in the work of supporting transitions to adulthood for young people is that the child welfare system, as I currently see it, is a system that was created for children. And it was created during a time when there were cultural norms about how to do things and the way that the community provided a standard of care to young people, and that practice actually continues to exist. So with all of the best intentions, although there are those with jurisdiction over caring for young people, I think that the larger community has forgotten our collective responsibility to ensure that young people in our communities feel cared for, embraced, and are supported. One of the things that I've been kind of noticing is in the Child and Family Services Act, there is a section that says we will provide a standard of care like the community provides. So the Vancouver Foundation did a report not that long ago asking people all over the province, how do they care for 19 to 28-year-olds? So I don't know how many of you have heard of Generation Squeeze or you've seen our survey, but unsurprisingly, for a range of reasons, parents, people between 19 and 28 are providing a whole bunch of support to the kids in their lives. And that actually, as much as some of us might want to stop being a parent when our kids turn 19, that doesn't actually happen. And that for many, many people, I think about 35% was in the last census, 35% of people, young people between 19 and 30 are living at home, and that number keeps increasing. How many of you heard of rebound kids? How many of you have rebound kids? Yeah, so the reality is because of today's world, because of the economy, the cost of tuition, the kind of jobs that exist, it becomes increasingly harder for young people to kind of get their footing in the same way that young people in the 50s and the 70s and even the 80s were able to do. And so the work that we're doing is to try and highlight how young people's experience of their transition to adulthood is very different than it was when the Child and Family Services was initially set up to support young people. In our survey, we discovered that, of course, the range of supports that people provide are not just limited to free rent, but that's a big one. It's connected to groceries, emotional support, transportation, help with tuition. How many of you have help with rent, groceries, or tuition? Yeah. And how many of you would expect that that's what you would do for your own kids one day? For those of you who haven't raised your hands. So, I mean, I think what I would like to just say about the transition survey is it gave us a ton of information about what the norms are for actually how people care for their kids after 19 in our province. And the invitation for people who do this work is to just think about how we get to show up and be the kinds of parents to the young people we've removed from their families as we would be to our own kids. And that it's not just about who has the responsibility for it. This is not just about MCFD. This is actually about how do we as practitioners, as volunteers in our community, as other family members, coaches, educational institutions, how we all can kind of come together and show up for the kids in our community and highlight the value that they bring for adding value to the world that we kind of, for the kind of world that I imagine that we all want to be part of creating, which is where everyone has the opportunity to show up in the world with all of their gifts and talents, and that it feels equitable and that we feel we're contributing to a just society. With that being said, I think I should pause and move over my 10 minutes, but just wanted to share a few of those words. We're here throughout the night. I'm blessed to have with us some young people that we work with, including a colleague, and so if you have questions about some of the work we're doing, feel free to be in touch. Thank you very much.
So Chris starts us off really well by being able to talk about her experience and about identifying the fact that when we think about work, our connection to young people, our responsibility as duty bearers, which are adults that are responsible for bringing the rights of children to children, is to be able to educate and support them as they become, in the world, adults that are contributing citizens. Krista started us off with some information that now sort of gives us a foundation.
I guess, okay, yeah, so my name is Jess Boone, I'm 25 years old. I am a student at the University of British Columbia on a tuition waiver program. Former youth in care, I was on a continuing custody order while I was in care. I was there for about 14, so yeah, spent my teen years in government care in Port Coquitlam. I was what could be considered very much a high-risk youth, not anymore. But I was definitely very troubled in my time in care. I didn't move a lot, which is actually very uncommon for kids in care. I was never moved, but I was in an all teenage girls foster home. And when I aged out at 19, I hadn't graduated high school, and I was in absolutely no way prepared to transition. Still struggling with things such as mental health and post-traumatic stress disorder that I developed from my experiences before care and then being in care and witnessing the experiences of the people that I lived with. So for about the first 6 to 8 months out of care, I was struggling with things like income, mental health, and substance misuse, all in the same 6 months. And there was no services. Nobody came looking for me 6 to 8 months out of this. I was very fortunate to have a social worker who at least informed me about the Agreements with Young Adults program before I left care, but I had to go seek them out myself to apply to the program to finish high school. Once I finished high school, I kind of moved away from the friend group that I had. I wanted to pursue post-secondary, so I looked into a program at Vancouver Community College for a counseling program. In order to get to this program, I needed volunteer hours, so that's how my relationship with the Federation of BC Youth and Care Networks, or the Fed, started. I volunteered, I got my hours for post-secondary, and I actually just didn't stop volunteering with the Fed, and my role with that organization started growing. And as I started to get on more projects and then started leading projects, I was developing more relationships with youth who were either in care or formerly in care. So I started running local development projects, and just more responsibility was coming away. I was learning more personally and professionally, developing. So I was doing post-secondary and at BCC, and eventually I got a job as a program assistant at the Fed. That kind of, my first break into the nonprofit sector. Did that.
Jess, I'm wondering if I can sort of go to Alexis
Sorry.
and see how their experience was as they sort of come moving out of care. Because what you're saying is, initially it was a confusing mess, in other words, right?
It still can be.
Yeah.
Very much. I mean, even if situations do improve, I mean, these things are ongoing. I think dealing with something like post-traumatic stress disorder, things get better, things get worse. It's a matter of having those stable relationships ongoingly. That support that will be there. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have one of my mentors here today that is supporting me through this whole, throughout this whole entire journey of being somebody who had no resources when they first aged out of care to, ending up in university, which I never thought would ever happen.
So, Nigel and Alexis, as you listen to Jess's story, do you see similarities or differences?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, she's right in saying that as a youth coming out of care, there's really not any support for you. So that just, it's just like the video showed, everybody just kind of backs away. And, all of a sudden you're expected to be an adult just like that, on a single day, an arbitrary age. And, you once were a youth and now you just have to figure everything out. So
It must be a fairly overpowering experience to, like the video shows, you go from a caring group of people into that sense of being alone and being overwhelmed by all the choices that now you have available. Nigel, how was your experience?
Well, I think mine really was started when I was like 15, 16. I got kicked out of school, and I probably been to like 3 or 4 school in Abbotsford, 1 in Langley. But yeah, I kind of started like that, met a group of friends, hung out, you know, like have fun, why not? But then it starts to get harder and harder. My dad was always working all the time, and it got harder for him that he couldn't take care of me and be home and like tell me that I had to be inside and stuff. But then it got to the point that I was staying out like really late, and I was starting partying and stuff like that. And he didn't like that. As a parent, I can understand, because now I'm older, I know better. But yeah, so he kicked me out. About that time, I stayed with my friends for a month or 2, why not? Then I moved back home because I was doing bad things, like partying all the time, doing drugs and all that stuff. And so I moved back home, and then I still kept doing what I was doing, wasn't listening to my dad, and why not? So then he decided that he couldn't take care of me. He's getting a little bit older, I guess, and so he gave me up for the ministry. And then from then I went to foster home, to foster home, to foster home, to foster home, to foster home. Just kept going on and on and on. And I don't know, I guess like my experience as a child and like in the foster care was kind of a little bit different than others, because like I've seen like trauma all my life, and that's all I've seen, right? All I know. But yeah, it's too hard when I think about it and think about things like that, because I try to leave it over in the past, right? Because there's a lot of things that I would like to say to people that I can't say now, because I don't know, I just really don't like talking about it or talking about things that my experience have happened. But
So Nigel, you can talk as much as you want about where you want to go.
yeah.
But I'm wondering if I can ask the question of, and for all 3 of you, what really has worked prior to leaving care in preparing you for leaving care?
Just the social workers that were there for me. Like I had one Pacific social worker that was awesome and always chased me down wherever I am. She'll find me, she'll yell for me no matter what. Like honestly, like I feel so blessed, and I feel like crying sometimes when I think about that, because it's like somebody that loved you and cared about you more rather than yourself. Like you can care less about yourself, but there's this one person that will come and run you down wherever you're at, right? So that's love. That's what I think that's love, and that's caring. And those are the people that you need in your life to be there and to tell you when you have tough times and rough times, and to tell you it's okay, just comfort you, and why not, right?
Yeah. So is there anything more you want to say, or can I move it over to Jess? Yeah, okay. So Alexis and Jess, what kinds of things worked for you prior to leaving care, thinking about the time of leaving care?
I think I agree that I had some really fantastic workers that supported me all throughout my youth agreement, and counselors in school that were really, really supportive and encouraging. You know, and they were pretty good that when I aged out, they still kept in touch. I was still, I could email them and that sort of thing. So that was good, but it certainly wasn't as much, right? It wasn't their job anymore. But yeah, I think just that emotional support and everything and encouragement was really good.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I pretty much agree with my 2 fellow speakers here, that mentorship is extremely important for youth who are, in and from care. Myself personally, one of the best workers I ever had was a lead worker, and what made her so special is the fact that many adults in my life before that did not have an interest in the arts. And this is the first time that an older person who was extremely well educated, interesting, successful, emulated all these things that you would want and somebody to look up to, took this specific time to take me on a tour to Emily Carr. Said, even though I was only 15 years old, and said like, well, you're thinking about going to film school one day. I didn't end up going to film school, but we're gonna do that now. We're gonna go on tour now at 15. You're gonna start thinking about college. And you know, it's that one-to-one time, going the extra mile for young people. I did not have this particular worker for a long time, probably only about 2 years, but just, you know, as I tell you this today, that's like close to 10 years ago now. This is still in my brain of like, this is important. This matters to young people. When you take the extra mile, when you are the first adult in their life to do something special for them.
Right. So we have a number of students in the room that are learning to be social workers, child and care workers, and come and support young people. What do you think that you would like them to know? Because we in the education institution, we talk to them a lot about theory. We have lots of information for them. But what I'm hearing is this thing about dedication, running you down. The sense about knowing you and getting to know what are your interests and helping you pursue them. And the sense about a relationship, something that's really important, and that you didn't feel like you were a number or somebody that was a job description to them. But what else do you think would be helpful for them to know that can make a difference? Any of these?
I think the most thing is about just having trust, like be able to trust things. Like if a child can trust you and know that you're there and stuff like that, they will like vote on you and they will give you all the anger they have inside of them, and they will, you know, they return to they will walk away learning happy, knowing that they can trust you, knowing that somebody cares, and I think that's the most thing that's pretty important.
Okay. Again, first off, I think the theory is actually very important. I think it's just as equally as important as the relationships. You got to learn to balance the two. The Ministry of Children and Family Development and all the nonprofits surrounding youth and care is extremely complicated. I can, you know, speak for somebody who's been in care and currently, you know, works within the system a lot of the time. I'm around social workers and nonprofit workers, and you learn something new constantly.
What, as you went through your journey of being in care and then leaving care and being in the world, do you wish that somebody had asked something, a particular question or something that wasn't asked of you, that you were really hoping that somebody would have had a conversation with you about, or asked something that was important to you, like, how are you feeling about this change? What kinds of things do you need? I don't know what the question would be, but do you think that there is just maybe a question or just a conversation that needs to happen that you would have liked to have seen?
Me as a youth, when I was growing up, since I was like 2, 3, whatever, right? I love to dance and I love to sing. Oh, I know, right? But closed doors. But no, I just wish somebody like would have told, you know, asked me like something like, what do I want to do when I grow up, or how do I want to do this? What is something I could change about myself or about my life and stuff like that? But even though my social worker always chased me down, like she got me dance classes and stuff like that, and she was the person that really was there to care for me, so appreciate it.
Okay.
I got nothing.
Yes.
I don't know.
How real is this gonna get? Okay, I'm a big advocate, like anti-exploitation, anti-homelessness, anti-poverty and stuff like that. One of the biggest conversations that I would like social workers to start having is discussion around exploitation and homelessness for youth, and ensuring that that doesn't happen once youth leave care. It's like just one of the things that I want to
So we're moving on in the evening, and we'd like to actually give an opportunity to thank the young people for coming out. and to share their story and to educate us about what their experience was. So why don't we give that?
I'm Jennifer Nelson, and I work with the Youth Resource Center at Abbotsford Community Services, and I've been there for a little over 5 years, and before that I did my child and youth care degree here at UFE. And I did my practicum at YRC. As they say, I stayed. They couldn't get rid of me. I was a homeless youth when I was young myself. I wasn't in care though. There wasn't any, I kind of slipped through the cracks. There wasn't any independent living or anything like that when I lived on the street. So I never found any of those programs. So I ended up, didn't want to stay, and I had to do some stuff to make sure that I got off the street and got working and stuff like that pretty early. So I have a little bit of an understanding about what you guys had to go through to become an adult, because it's not very easy when you don't have anybody helping you out. And I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to identify who can be natural supports in these youth lives, because really I'm 36 and I still ask my mom for stuff. Like, I just broke my leg and she's away right now, and it's not easy, right? So I can't imagine not having those supports throughout your entire life, because even in the hard times and your happiness, right? Sometimes you have like a really good accomplishment and you turn around and you see that there's nobody there to see it. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would wish for all these youth is.
So that's what you try to do as a frontline worker. Is you're trying to make strong relationships with young people so that you can be there and hear what it is that they need to say.
Yeah, well, as best as I can, right? As I say, a lot of them look at me and they say, well, you're my 6th worker, and how much of a relationship do I want to have with you, right? So you just have to work with the youth and try to build as much trust as you can. And I mean, they all know that when they turn 19, or I don't know if they all know that. I mean, I know everybody that I work with will answer any phone calls and go out for coffee with them after 19 as often as they possibly can. But there is the mentality that as soon as you turn 19, you're just going to drop me anyways. So they get scared and they get very, a lot of them within like 6 months before turning 19, they just drop right off the radar, because they figure if you can't find them, they won't turn 19. And then maybe nobody will stop giving them services, right?
It's funny that you laugh about that,
Mhm.
but I just can't imagine looking at my 19th birthday 6 months before it and knowing that all of the relationships that have been there are going to shift and eventually be gone. That would scare the crap out of me. I would want to go hide somewhere, and so that it can't get me. A chronological age.
Yeah.
Chronological age.
Yeah.
So anybody else have anything that from the work?
Well, I'm kind of getting more and more passionate as I'm listening to all of this. First of all, I want to say how grateful I am that I was asked to speak here, because I really feel passionate about it. I'm Linda Noble, and I work at Youth Resource Center, and I'm also a foster parent. And when I said that we stumbled into fostering 35 years ago, it was really the truth. We just stumbled into it, didn't know anything about it, and just so happened that we got started and loved it. So our oldest foster daughter is 47, with 4 beautiful children of her own, and we have a 15-year-old still. So, and I have learned far more from the kids that I've had in my home than I could ever have taught anybody. But I would say that what I have learned is that, there's really no difference in being a biological mother or a foster mother or a caregiver. But that our role really is to, support people younger than us to be the best that they can be. And that in itself is an incredibly rewarding thing to do. When I see kids come into care, I've usually only had youth that were teenagers, but when I see kids come into care, every child has to find their own identity. Every person has to find their own identity. And when a kid comes into care, the trauma that happens there stops that process. And it takes a long time for those children to kind of find their identity again. And when that happens, it usually takes so long that by the time they start to do that, they're just about ready to leave care, and then they're in another traumatic situation. So I think what happens, when they leave care, they're excited, of course, because they're free. But they're too young to realize that that freedom has so many pitfalls as well, right? And so I think that as caregivers and as society, what we have to do is invite these children, these youth, these young adults, to stay connected and to build their families with us and with our society and our community, and learn to be not just independent but interdependent, so that they can build a self-made family that they can go to for help. And I think that as they need a friend, they need a role model, they need a wise person that they can talk to without being judged about the mistakes that they make and will continue to make. They need support, emotional, physical, and financial. I don't know one kid that has aged out of care or has grown up and left their home that doesn't need all of those. They need access to counseling, because our kids can't touch that piece until they're older. Sometimes, I would say that most of the kids that I have seen grow up, it's not until they're 25 plus that they can realize that these are some of the things I need. Up until then, they're just surviving, right? So they need to be invited to join groups and communities and be a part of the family. And they need to have these self-identified families to champion for them, to advocate for them, and to work with them to show them that they can get through any challenge, survive it, and move forward. And then they need to be applauded for the work that they've done to do that. And I think that for the youth in care, the government is their family. And we are the government, society. So it is our job as a society to care for these kids. And you speak about the low-hanging fruit and the high organizational stuff. I think the low piece is the fact that as a community, we can come together and support these kids for what they need and invite them in to join groups, cafes, these places where they can find the people that they want to make a part of their family.
Thanks, Lynn. It's up. Yeah, you can start talking. Or singing, or whatever you want to do.
So I'm Obi.
I think I lied to you.
No, she just didn't have clothes.
Gotta bring it a bit closer.
Okay.
There we go.
It doesn't
All right.
pretend you're watching.
So my name is Obi, and I'm a social worker. I'm a guardianship social worker. I'm the social worker, right? And I was thank you for bringing all that to the table. I think I have learned at least one thing or two just from listening to what you're saying. And I think we, as a professional, we're missing that piece. We're missing our kids coming back and telling us, okay, this is what I needed from you, and you didn't give it to me. So maybe next time with your next kid, maybe you should give that. And that's a learning experience for us. It's humbling for us, but it's teaching us. Because when you go to do this job has many advantages and disadvantages, but you go with your heart. You really want to help. And if we don't know what we're not doing, we don't know how to do it. Because I was thinking to myself, I think that I do give my kids the impression that if they need to come back after they're 19, I'm there, I'm available. I might be not able to run for you like I did before that, but if you have a question or two, pick up the phone. I will be happy to answer you. I've been a social worker for 20 years and I've been in this line of work for 10 years, and I've been fortunate enough to have, fortunate or misfortunate, to see kids that I call them the children of my heart. Those are the kids that I removed, and I oversee them almost all the way to adulthood. And I know that in the last year, it just became crisis after crisis. And I think those kids are the ones that pushes me harder than everybody else. And I know that in my mind, I can see, okay, honey, we're getting to there. You have to start doing stuff. We have to start moving. Otherwise, you're only 19. And I see my anxiety and I see their anxiety, and you keep trying to push, but they're 19. I have my 22 years old sitting at the house on the sofa doing nothing, and I'm like, okay, and they expect kids 3 years younger than you to get out and do stuff when you're like sitting on the couch doing nothing, living off me. Sorry about that. I'm looking at my kids and I can see their anxiety. I had a meeting with a 17 years old, this big dude, gangster, want to be telling me, I will end up on the street when I'm 19, you will be living with me, I will be homeless and I will end up dead, what do you have to say? I'm like, really not much, but maybe we can do something around that. So I agree with you, we need to push the age. It doesn't make sense by the age of 19. But one of the other things that I've learned that in the last year of my kids, because what I do, I work with older kids, right? I work with youth agreement and I work with CICs around the age of 17, 18. But I've learned that at the age of 18, I start working with them. I start kind of helping, okay, this is coming, let's see what we can do. But what works with my kid is the connections that they have, the connection that we can make for them at that last year, right? So I look at my caseload and I can see, okay, this one will go back to live with mom, this one I have no problem because I know that brother is waiting for him. I'm worried about this one because he's right in foster care right now. And regardless, like, you can see my kids and you can think whatever do you want to think about them. But I will look at them and I will say, this one have no place to go. This one is the one that I worry. And we will run and we will put the PWD and we will do, and I guess the conversation starts, you need to tell me when to stop. I'm really excited because this conversation had started, I think, a couple of years ago, and we see so many changes. I hear from people telling me, oh, to do this for my kid, it's such a huge project. And I'm like, it's not so huge project. There are so many people out there in the community that now are willing to talk about it, are willing to say, okay, so when I'm coming in and say, I'm a social worker, my kid is a child in care, if you won't complete what he needs to be completed, in 2 months my kid is out on the street. And I can see people that are reacting to that and they feel the urgency and they're willing to work harder because my kid is a kid in care coming out of care, right?
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, because we're coming up to a time where we're going to move in to everybody sort of interacting and having refreshments together, is to give Cricket a little bit of time too, you can add to if you're
Hi, I'm Cricket Minich. I facilitate the agreements with young adults for South and East Fraser. So basically we're talking Surrey to Boston Bar. The youth that are eligible for the program are youth such as these 3 ladies that were in ministry care till their 19th birthday, either in a continuing custody, so we're their parents, or a youth agreement. The youth can apply to my program and you can access funds for educational pursuits such as going to UBC, UFB, and other programs. I have to say I have met over the last 6 years the most amazing youth in the whole wide world, and they are way more high functioning than I was at their age. And I came from a two-parent family, but it doesn't matter. I guess it's how much maturity you have when you're turning 19 that gives you the drive and the goals. I'm not saying that these youth are perfect and they don't suffer from anxieties and fears, and it's hard, and I don't have a lot of supports besides some funds to throw at them. So I would say the youth that come to my program are successful because they have stable housing, they have an education goal, and they have some supports and mentorship, whether it be Jen or not. But those are the kind of youth that are very successful on the program. What I would like to see is extending mental health services, because all the youth usually want counseling after 19, and I don't have access to counseling, just like what Linda said. And also housing. There's no affordable housing. We pay a max of $600 rent for youth, and like, where are you gonna get that from? Nowhere, right? So, you know, I think affordable housing, mentorship in the community, adults that are gonna take on these people, and there are amazing adults in our community, amazing, that have no relationships to these kids, but just mentor them because they want to. So I guess those are the things that I've experienced. I have lots more to say, but we're running out of time, so thank you very much for inviting me. Hi, Carl.
So